My apologies for not being there today, but I am going to have to work with the lesson from my video today. So if you could all just get out either you can do this note on the back of the worksheet that the supply can hand out, or you can take this note in your notebooks. But our lesson for today is titled Equations of Lines in Other Forms. If you need to pause this video to get out your notes and write the title down, you can do that. Otherwise, here we go. So the very first thing that we're going to do here is we are going to write an equation of the line shown on the graph below. So again, maybe pause the video. You can try to write this equation of the line. If you pause the video and have restarted it, fantastic. If not, I'm going to write the equation of this line here. So we know that our equation of a line is generally y equals mx plus b. We always need to determine two things. We need to figure out my slope, which is equal to the rise over the run. In this case, I'm going to determine my slope by drawing rise and a run between 2 points. We are going over 1, 2, 3, 4. I have a run of 4. We're going up 1, 2, 3, 4. I have a rise of 4. So that's equal to 4 over 4, which is just equal to a slope of 1. And then our second thing that we need to determine always is the b value, which is my initial value, or my y-intercept, we've been calling it. And that's just your starting point. Okay, that's just equal to 2. So if I wanted to write the equation for this line, I'm going to write y equals, my m is 1. So I put that in here. That's 1. X, and then plus 2. Okay? And that would be my equation for that line there. If you did have a chance to try that, hopefully you got it, because that is a review from last unit. Okay, we're going to continue here. We're going to skip over this. We would usually have a discussion on that. We are now going to talk about this part here. So again, what do you need to know in order to graph a line? So we've been talking about this pretty frequently over the last 2 units. You really, and I just mentioned on the last slide, but you need 2 things. You need one, the slope, and the second thing you always need is the b value, which is the y-intercept or the start. Okay, or the initial value. Okay, you need 2 pieces of information. And if you ever want to graph a line, if you ever want an equation for a line, you always need 2 pieces of information. And that will never change. Okay, so that is what we need to know. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to look at some equations that look a little bit different than what we've been looking at so far. But what we're going to do is from those equations, we're going to try to determine what our slope and our y-intercept are. So let's continue. So we have an equation here. It says, what is the slope and y-intercept of the line below? So the very first thing that you may notice here is that this equation is not in the form y equals mx plus b. Okay? For it to be in the form y equals mx plus b, we need to have y by itself. And so in this equation, if I want to determine the slope and the y-intercept, I need to get y by itself. And so what we need to do here is we need to think back to our algebra unit, and we need to rearrange this equation and isolate or get y by itself. So what I am going to do in this question is to get y by itself here, I need to get rid of this 2x. So you can do this in whichever way you want. You can subtract 2x from both sides like this. Now, personally, in this topic here, that is not my preference. So my preference is to grab that 2x and bring it to the other side of the equal sign. Now, what's extremely important to remember is that when that number switches sides, it does in fact switch signs. And so that is going to become y equals, when that 2x moves over, it becomes minus 2x. And the 5 did not move, so that is plus 5. And so this becomes my equation of the line. And hopefully we can all recognize that from here, my slope is equal to negative 2 over 1. And my y-intercept is equal to positive 5. Okay. Our goal in these questions is to always, today, is going to be to get y by itself. Okay, that is our goal. Once y is by itself or is isolated, we can determine the equation of the line. So let's continue. Again, we have the slope y-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. We always want to get our equation into y equals mx plus b. Now, standard form looks a little bit different. And what you'll notice in this form is that y and x are on the same side. And this is what standard form looks like. So what I would like you to do in your notes is I would like you to copy this information down. So standard form of a line says that ax plus by is equal to c, where a, b, and c are any integers and they have no common factors. A is always greater than 0 and a is not negative or 0. And there is an example for you. If you would like to pause this video to get a chance to write that down, that would be great. Otherwise, I am going to continue. So now basically, any time an equation looks a little bit differently, like it does not look like y equals mx plus b, what we need to do is we need to use algebra to rearrange this formula. And so I'm going to have you all copy down this formula that you see here onto your notes or into your notes. And I'm going to have you follow along with the steps that I take to get y by itself. Okay? All right, so copy that down. And what we're going to do is we're going to get y by itself. So what that means is everything that is not a y, I'm going to move to the other side of the equal sign. Now, like I did in algebra, I'm going to put that little dotted line across there just to show me or remind me that when I grab a number and move it to the other side, it's going to change its sign. Okay, and so in this example, I'm going to move both my 3x and my 8 to the right side of the equation. And what I get is I get 4y, that did not move, equals my 3x moved, it's going to become negative 3x, and my 8 moved, and it's going to become negative 8. And now my last step in this question is to figure out what y is again, I'm trying to get y by itself. So if you think back to our algebra unit, how do I get rid of that 4 in front? Well, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to divide by 4. Now, the problem here is that on the right-hand side of the equation, I have 2 terms. Okay? Now, in a question like this, when you have more than one term on the right side, all you're going to do is you're going to divide each of those terms by 4. Okay? And in doing that, the 4s on the left, these 2 4s, cancel out. We have y equals, and on my right side, it's going to be negative 3 over 4 x minus 2. Okay? Basically, I'm taking the numbers and I'm dividing the number by the number, the number by the number. Okay? And in this question, my slope is going to be equal to negative 3 over 4. And my y-intercept is going to be equal to negative 2. Now, EQAO loves these questions. It loves to give you questions where you need to rearrange a formula to determine the slope and the y-intercept. We're going to do another example. Same idea here. Okay, the steps are going to be the same. So what I'm going to do again, I would recommend you copying this example down. Copying this example down is helpful because you can refer back to it when you're trying these questions on your own. And it just writing this stuff down, is good practice. We talked about this yesterday, that to get better at this stuff, you need to actually do it, okay? Excuse me. Okay. So again, I need to get y by itself. It means I need to move everything except the y. I'm going to take my 3x in this, and I'm going to move it over to the other side of the equal sign. 2y did not move. When that 3x moved, it becomes a negative 3x. And that 10 did not move. It's just going to remain as plus 10. Now my last step here is to divide by the number in front of the y. Divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. And we get an equation of, those cancel out, y equals negative 3 over 2x plus 5. In this question, my slope is equal to negative 3 over 2, and my y-intercept is equal to 5. Okay? Again, the more that you do these, the easier they become, and the more you'll remember this in the future. Okay? Now this one's a little bit tricky. We're going to use the same steps, very similar steps. What you want to recognize here is that in this question, y is negative. Now, when I write y equals mx plus b, notice that there is no negative symbol in front of that. So I do not want negative y. I do not want that negative there. Okay? So my goal is to remove that negative. And in a question like this, I do find that the easiest step to take here is to immediately get rid of that negative. And so to do that, what we're going to do is we are going to bring the y instead to the other side. And what happens when I do that is that becomes a plus y. Now, rewriting this equation, I get x equals 8 plus y. Now all I'm going to do, I want to get y by itself. I'm going to bring this 8 to the other side, where it becomes x minus 8 equals y. And now that y is by itself, you can just flip this around and write y equals x minus 8. And that's your final equation. And in this equation specifically, my slope, what number is in front of x? It is 1, and my y-intercept is negative 8. Okay? Moving on. Okay. Now this is a good question here because this is something that what we've done so far, we've kind of touched on algebra. Now what we haven't done yet is we actually haven't talked about the x-intercepts. Okay? We've talked about y-intercepts. We have not yet talked about x-intercepts. And hopefully we remember what a y-intercept is. Okay? That's the first thing that I'm going to identify. And my y-intercept, and I'm going to highlight that in yellow for you, my y-intercept is this number right here. My y-intercept in this case, y-intercept is equal to 3. Now, if you know what a y-intercept is, it's where your line crosses the y-axis. So, what do you think an x-intercept is? If in your minds you're thinking that's where it crosses the x-axis, you are correct. And so where does our graph cross the x-axis? It crosses the x-axis right here. And so in this question, my x-intercept is going to be equal to positive 4. Okay? X and y intercepts. It's where your line crosses the x-axis or where your line crosses the y-axis. Now in this question, it is telling us to identify the x and y intercepts. And again, I will very likely give you this question on a test. Okay? And so this is kind of a two-step question. The first thing we're going to try to find is the x-intercept. And then the second thing we're going to try to find is the y-intercept. Okay? Now we're going to go back up to here for a second. And what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in on this graph a little bit. And specifically here, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the yellow point first, my y-intercept. What is my coordinate at this point here? If I had to write that coordinate as an x and y coordinate, does anybody know what that coordinate might be? Think about it for a second. If you are thinking that that coordinate is 0, 3, you are absolutely correct. X is your 0, y is 3. Notice that y being 3, that is what I wrote for my y-intercept. Now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to zoom in on the x-intercept. Now at this point here on my x-intercept, can anybody think of what that coordinate is? The coordinate of your x-intercept, think about it for a second. The y coordinate at your x-intercept is 4, 0. And if you're noticing that 4 is your x, and your x-intercept is 4, that makes sense. That's a pretty simple connection right there. Okay? Now, what is very, very important here is that when we are looking at our x-intercept, if I were to draw like a whole bunch of different lines, let's say I drew this line, let's say I drew this line, let's say I drew this line, let's say I drew this line. My x-intercepts are here, 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 all along the x-axis. Now, what is the y coordinate of each of those x-intercepts? If I were to write those out, this x-intercept here would be -3, 0. This x-intercept here would be -1, 0. This x-intercept here would be 2, 0. This x-intercept here would be 5, 0. What do you notice about the y coordinate at every one of those x-intercepts? The y coordinate is 0. That's true for every x-intercept. So what we're going to do is, if I want to in the next question figure out what the x-intercept is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set y equal to 0. And watch what happens. Nope, and then solve for x. Okay? I get 2x plus 4 times 0 equals -8. Well, that's just 0. I get 2x equals -8. And if I'm solving for x, I'm going to divide both sides by 2. And I get x equal to -4. That's your x-intercept. Okay? What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sketch this in here. An x-intercept at -4 is like over here somewhere. We'll call that -4. Okay? If I want to find my y-intercept, let's look up my y-intercept. What do you notice about the x-coordinate here? It's 0. And so for every single y-intercept, your x-coordinate is always going to be 0. And so if I'm looking to determine my y-intercept, what we're going to do is we are going to set x equal to 0 and solve for y. I'm going to write 2 bracket 0 plus 4y equals negative 8. 2 times 0 is 0. That goes away. I have 4y equals negative 8. I'm going to divide both sides by 4. Divide by 4. And when I do that, I get, y equal to negative 2. And so a y-intercept of negative 2 would be roughly down here. And if I have 2 coordinates, I can probably graph that line. If I wanted to graph this line, it might look like this. Okay, that's roughly what that line would look like. Okay? So that's how to find your x and y-intercept. If you want to find your x-intercept, you set y equal to 0 and solve for x. If you want to find your y-intercept, set x equal to 0 and solve for y. Okay. The very last question here, a little bit of a thinker. Okay. If you want to pause the video and read this, maybe give students some time to try this question, you can do that. We can do that. They can also work on some homework for a little bit. And then if near the end of class you want to play this video again so they can see the answer, we can do that. Or you can just keep it plain, and I'm going to do the answer to this question now. So this question says, a new line is, so it's giving us some information, perpendicular to the line represented by this equation. So it's perpendicular to that. And then it says it has the same y-intercept as the line represented by this. So I think what this question is asking me is it wants me to find the slope using the yellow highlighted equation, and it wants me to find the y-intercept using the blue highlighted equation. And so I think no matter what the question is asking, what I have to do is I have to put both equations into y equals mx plus b form. Okay? And so we're going to do that now. The first equation is 3x minus y equals 5. I'm going to rearrange this. I'm going to bring my y to the other side. And at the same time, I'm actually going to bring my 5 to this side. And when I do that, I get 3x minus 5 equals y, or y equals 3x minus 5. Doing the same thing to the other one, I have 4x minus 3y minus 12 equals 0. This is a great question, by the way. If you're wondering what a question, an application or thinking question could be on a test, this is a great question for that. Okay. So again, when I talk, sometimes I get distracted. I made a little mistake there. Okay, I brought my y to the other side. I'm going to divide every single thing by 3, by 3, by 3. Doing that, I get 4 over 3x minus 4 equals y, or y equals 4 over 3x minus 4. Okay, now let's go back to what the question was asking. It was asking me in the yellow point. It said it's perpendicular to the first equation. And so from yesterday, if my slope of the first line is this, what is my perpendicular slope? So if my original slope is 3, if we think back to yesterday, we are going to determine what the negative reciprocal of that is. So the negative reciprocal is it's going to become negative, and we flip the fraction. It was 3 over 1. It becomes 1 over 3. So this is my new slope of my new equation. If I want to know the y-intercept of the next part says the y-intercept is the same. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the y-intercept from my second equation, which is -4. And so what I should be able to do now is I should be able to write out my equation for this line. The new line, the equation is going to be y equals -1/3 x minus 4. And that's your equation of the line. Okay? You have lots of practice to complete today. So there still should be a lot of time left in class. You have the worksheet from yesterday, okay, which I didn't give you any time in class to do. I did say that I would give you time in class today, so you can work on that. Or you have the handout from today. So there's lots of practice for you to complete, and we will be having a quiz on Thursday. Okay, so tomorrow we're going to do one more new lesson, and then Thursday you're going to have a quiz on this stuff. Okay, so I would highly recommend taking some time today, practice some of this stuff here. Tomorrow, if you have any questions about this stuff, I will take some time to take up today's homework and yesterday's homework. So please take some time to try this stuff out. All right, we will see you all tomorrow. Hopefully, have a great day.